Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to day two of the Digital Transformation Summit presented by Internet and Mobile Association of India and Accenture. At this conference, we're aiming to bring together industry experts, thought leaders, and transformation agents from a wide range of sectors to deliberate on technologies that are shaping the transformation of businesses today. We have received a brilliant response yesterday on day one with over 1,500 delegates attending sessions across 3 panels. I would like to quickly thank our partners before we start off: our title partner Accenture, our track partner Automation Anywhere, our cloud communication partner Route Mobile, and our bronze partner Tata Teleservices. With that, let us now begin with our session. This session is a fireside chat on the topic Navigating Complexities in Tech Innovations. And for the same, I would like to welcome our moderator, Ms. Sudha Jamthe, AI Professor, Stanford University and Business School of AI. We welcome you, ma'am. Ms. Jamthe is the author of 6 books and teaches IoT, AI, and autonomous vehicles business courses at Stanford Continuous Studies and at the Business School of AI.com. She enjoys mentoring cities and industry leaders on new business transformation using data to get ready for autonomous vehicles. She's the chair of Strategic Advisory Board for Barcelona Technology School and an ambassador for Funding Box Impact Connected Cars Europe Edge 2020 Community and NGI. She's a champion of the STEM programs and Girls Who Code and hosts IoT Day Women and serves on the Women's COE Advisory for IoT Slam. Ms. Jamthe has an MBA from Boston University and BS Computer Science Engineering from Madras University. I would now request Ms. Jamthe to please take over the session and introduce our next panelist. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Garima. It's such a pleasure to be here. Hello, everybody. It is wonderful to be here. I wish I would be able to see you all in person, but I'm hoping that we will have a fun conversation on managing complexity. So let me introduce Christian Mastrodonato. Christian, if I were to describe him in one word without exaggeration, I would call him a genius. And if you have heard or seen any of my work, I don't use that word so lightly. Chris is a global digital leader with expertise in every aspect of software engineering, data system, artificial intelligence, and building products and digital transformation. But he's very fascinated about this topic of complexity, and he has the superpower to go demystify it. Chris and I go a long way at Barcelona Technology School, where we are part of the same strategic advisory board. So I get to see him with sparks of creativity, demystify complexity in helping Barcelona Technology School manage digital transformation and go create leaders for digital transformation. So without further ado, let us get started. Chris, would you add anything to your intro?
Well, first of all, good morning, everybody, and thanks a lot also for the organizer for having invited me. And it would have been great. I agree to see, to be able to see people, face to face. But this is the modern life in a way, and we are hopefully slowly adapting to it, even if we don't like all the things. And the second thing, Sudha, is probably too much, let's say, a definition of me. So I just would like to demystify, at least, let's say, that definition is clearly too much, and I don't deserve that, but it has been really nice, at least, to hear that. I just to give a bit of background, I kind of work in just in different sector, and I think that's also the part that brought me to add this interesting complexity. But I do start with, let's say, PhD in quantum statistical physics, so that's the place where I learned complexity theory. But then I work in different industry, from software to engineering to manufacturing, and apply software data engineering problems in different roles. And in that sense, I learned, let's say, all the different facets on my skin in many cases of what does it happen if you oversimplify problem, if you don't take complexity into account. And now I'm working for a company controlled by the British government, which is called Digital Catapult, and it is the Digital Innovation Accelerator for UK. So in that sense, is a great place to see, let's say, complexity unfolding, trying to accelerate the digital economy in a modern country. That's, I think, describe a bit more, let's say, starting from your very kind words.
Okay, so I was thinking the way we would do this is I have a set of questions that I want to ask you. You can turn back and ask me questions, or we can build on our conversation. And as the audience have questions, I believe they have a chat platform where they can ask questions. It's going to be fed to us. Maybe we can jump in and start answering those questions. Yeah.
Yes, of course.
It's good for everybody. Okay. So why does complexity matter? Why does it matter? I mean, tell me from your experience. You have this wide range of experience. Why does complexity matter?
Well, it's a very relevant question. So there is a fundamental factor that we need to take into account into the modern world, which is change. Change is at the center of everything. And I think the first element that we have to take into account, all of us, if we look around us, and unfortunately the pandemic has accelerated this mindset, is that we need to embrace change to be able to embrace, let's say, the evolution of business, the evolution of marketing, the evolution of technology. For many, many years, the industry has been based on continuity and has been based on stability, but that's not valid anymore. And in a way, the science that trying to describe how the world behaves in constant change is complexity science. And while it is often seen as a complicated mathematical, let's say, field, in reality, there are a lot of important and practical implications that we can take in every day. And that's why I got fascinated into this topic, and why I think it's relevant for all of us, because it gives us some instruments to understand our world and to deal with it.
So is complexity a good thing?
I think it goes beyond good and bad. I think it's our reality. So it's our world and how the universe works. So it's like it's like asking, the sun is a good thing or the sky is a good thing. It's there, and it's really how our universe works. And in that sense, it's fair to say that historically, especially during the 20th century, the constant research of stability and efficiency made many people think, complexity is a bad thing, because they want everything simple, everything streamlined. But again, what they were, in a way, that's a wrong stance, at least in some situation, because again, that's how the world unfolds. So you're basically fighting against the current. If you're a physicist, you see you're fighting against the entropy. You know that's the direction that complexity goes, and you can't really win it. So in that sense, I think what it's important nowadays is to understand how to embrace it and how to take the best out of it.
So here we are talking about technology transformation, and audience here with 30 different speakers have already spent many sessions on it. And one truth about technology is that it is never constant. And anybody who's a leader in technology has to cannibalize their own business and disrupt their own services and products. And so complexity seems like a function of being in technology industry or just driving transformation. So let's get into the crux of this, specifically for technology industry, right? Technology is about innovation, right? So is there a way of dealing with bringing innovation into companies? And have you seen, I would say we can talk about it at a micro level, at a user level, which is where I would like to go. But let's start at a macro level. Since you have navigated multiple industries, how do you navigate innovation? How do you bring innovation into companies? As people are listening to this, they know there is so much change, there is so much opportunity, but a business leader is going to have multiple options presented to them. They are going to see what competition is doing. They are going to have strategy presented from various leaders in their org. How do you deal with it at a macro level?
So you actually use the word in your question that it's also part of the answer, okay, when you said the word options. So what you want, the core element at macro level, what you want to preserve to be able to face the uncertainty on one end, but also to really foster innovation, you want to preserve optionality. So from a macro perspective, what you really are trying to do is to build a portfolio of initiatives, each of them of different kinds that can innovate in different directions. It could be a marketing innovation, a product innovation, a technology innovation, a combination, of course, of those. And what you want is to create a portfolio of initiatives that can bring you as much value as possible. So there is definitely an element of keeping as many options as possible, especially at the beginning. And the easiest way I usually explain this to people is really, it's very close to a financial strategy. Okay, it's a risk management strategy in the end. So each of your activities in your portfolio has different risk profiles, return of investments, and especially, and that's the point when it is innovation, that's also something that people scares away. At the very beginning, it's very difficult to evaluate the ROI. So what you want to do is to experiment and iterate as much as you can on each of these pieces of innovation of each of these initiatives to de-risk them as much as you can and identify the return of investment as soon as you can. And of course, if they don't work, you want to close them as soon as you can. The last bit is really important, okay, because there are a lot of people, for obvious reason, innovation is often a personal activity in the sense that people come up with new ideas and they often fall in love with ideas. And it's important in a way sometimes to be brutal and ruthless and say, this idea was great, but it doesn't work. There's nothing bad to say sometimes. You really have a great idea, but it's the wrong time, the wrong place, the wrong moment, and the wrong historical moment, and it can't fly now. So it must be stopped. But that's part, again, from a risk. It's more, if you see it from a risk management and an investment strategy perspective, it makes sense. It's fine. So there is definitely, this is the way I always suggest approach innovation. And if you do it in this way, it can open up many opportunities. Another element, I think the other side of the coin, though, which is also important, you have to understand that especially if you are in a company that with an established business, for the people doing the core business, it's difficult sometimes to understand innovation. You can involve them, but you need to keep the innovation in a way a little bit separated by the macro business. Because if you try to bring the innovation back into the main business too soon in some situation, you basically kill the idea, even if it has a lot of potential. So there is a word which is more than a word, is a definition which is often is about innovation at the edge, which is also the other side of the coin. So I would just to resume these two at macro level. There is an element around building innovation as a portfolio strategy and a risk management strategy. And the second element is about innovation at the edge and being able to protect the innovation until it's stable enough to have its own life. And if it cannot have its own life, it's also a good sign that it doesn't work and it should be abandoned.
That's easier said than done. One
Very
of the
true.
things I have seen in my corporate past, I used to head mobile analytics, which was a $27 billion business at eBay, as you're aware. And we had this whole portfolio management mindset, right? So finance would actually look at risk and returns and create a portfolio and plot it in a 2x2 and say, okay, mobile is growing very fast and it is giving us huge returns, give it enough budget. And local is growing very slowly, but it's a long-term business and we need to nurture it, but we should not expect returns soon enough. So that portfolio approach is what they followed. And I remember there came a time when they had to decide whether we are going to keep the local business or not, and local business got shelved. And eBay said, yes, there is a viability for local business, but that's not going to be our cup of tea. And every business leader has to make that decision at some point. And today, when we are in the pandemic and lockdown, local is everywhere. Local delivery is commerce, right? But nobody could have seen that in the past. So that innovator's dilemma is always going to be there for business leaders. So you said something about, you look at it, look at the risk and return, look at the portfolio, and then make a decision and then say, it's a great idea, but this is not going to work, and shelve some things. For me, I'm a very, very big believer that people who are passionate about some technology, especially in technology industry, right, who are passionate about a specific technology, bring the technology when it doesn't exist in the company. I've seen in Mercedes-Benz where they said, we are going to bring AR and we are going to create a app by which we are going to digitize our driver's manual, and that didn't exist in the company, and they had to kind of go through a lot of obstacles to make that happen. And every company has a story like that. So my question is, how do you nurture that creative, innovative leader in the company who has business acumen, understands customers, has a pulse on the future, and comes in and says, okay, let's go invest in IoT. Let's build connected cars. Let's go make this thing happen. And then obviously it'll be a pilot, they will test it out, and they'll have to prove their ROI and the process. But how do you nurture that kind of leader? What does it take to nurture that leader? Have you seen, I know in Konica Minolta, you brought in digital transformation in a large scale. So what's your personal experience, or at a micro level, at a user level, if we have to nurture leaders to build out the future, how do you deal with that in a complex world?
I think what we're looking here is to build a culture. Okay, so when it comes to macro, which is related to the macro level in a way, but it's at micro level, the only way where you can make these changes is building a culture of change, and that's the core. So if you don't change the way of thinking, you don't change the attitude of the people working in the company. So the leaders you're looking for are the leaders that are bringing the culture that you want, a culture of innovation. And a culture of innovation is a culture that is based on a few things. It's based on, first of all, and most of all, curiosity. Because all the things you mentioned, it means that you have people that go out there, keep up to date, they go outside their typical field to study other fields and say, oh, is that interesting? Is it relevant for me? How can it help whatever I am doing? So it needs curiosity. It's fundamental. And the other trait that you're looking in your company is courage, bravery, okay, the capacity to try something with risk of failing, which is especially the second one. For many, many years, it's connected to my previous point of stability and efficiency. A culture of stability and efficiency kills innovation and kills courage, because every time you fail, you're threatening the stability, and that doesn't work. So innovation in that sense, it means creating a culture where you can say, yes, you can fail in small scale. So you need to create spaces where people can feel free to try and fail, and nothing bad happens to them. It's just the right thing to do, because if you don't try and you don't fail, you don't evolve. Again, it's another fact of nature. We might like it or not, but that's how nature works around us, and we have to embrace it. And that's the basic. But if you can foster these two elements and create a place where you can do these things, then it's innovation just runs free.
That's beautiful. So personal courage and curiosity, continuous curiosity. I mean, one of the things I focus on is to grow business leaders in the Business School of AI. It's a learning community. And I find that it's personal leadership, and people have to be aware, because they could be excited about technology and say, this is the next best thing, but they have to balance it. They need to have the courage to try, and not just to fail, but know when to back off. So I see a question maybe that's relevant here. The technology industry is ever changing, and what's your suggestion on how to deal with this complexity, or how we can prepare ourselves for this challenge? Do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think it's in the industry. If you want to prepare to complexity, we need to take care of a few things. First of all, one interesting thing that there is an interesting, let's say, heuristic law, which is called Conway's law, that I found. I didn't know it actually, and interestingly enough, I learned on my skin, and then I found out it was a law, Conway's law. I can't tell it by heart, but what the core concept what else is that information systems evolves in a way that follows the organization structure. which means that even if we sometimes consider technology and people and organization to different things, they evolve together. And that's fundamental. You always have to take that into account. Okay, you can't disentangle people and technologies, organizations and system architectures. Your system architectures will always evolve with the organization, even if you don't want it. So in that sense, is fundamental always when you build and you want to deal with complexity, that you sort of prepare your system architecture to follow the organization and vice versa, and keep them evolving constantly. And it's natural things, and I'm sure, especially people that work in system architecture or software architecture, kind of think about that. There are a lot of cases when the two things diverge too much, the system tends to break very easily, and that's something which you have to take into account. So there is an element there, and the other element is it's more, which is, let's say, typical also of complexity, is the capacity to take into account outliers. So, which is again part of innovation, but let's say we hear a lot talking about. And it's a terminology that Taleb brought in: black zones, white zones, and all these terms. But the mindset of outliers is that whatever careful planning or let's say you're going to do and predictions you're going to build, there are always going to be things that will happen outside of your planning. It's actually a fact. Okay, it's a statistical fact. It's mathematics. It can be demonstrated in many cases. So you might not like it, and you might want to believe I can build a perfect prediction engine. No, you can't. Nobody can. So the organization that strives are the organizations that are able to take advantage out of these outliers, are flexible enough and innovative enough that when something happens, they take advantage of it because they can adapt to it, and they can adapt their organization, their systems to the new outliers coming in. The organization that fails are the organization where an outliers come, they are too rigid and therefore brittle, and they break. So these are our core element, I think, from a technology point of view that you have to take into account. And I say that as a data expert, or at least in some situation as I'm considered. Data is not everything. The reality is you have to face things that you can't predict, and you need to be ready for that always.
Okay, I love data. Now you're provoking me to talk, but I want to come back to talk about data. But I have an audience question that is super intriguing, and I don't think we can leave without answering that one. So this is written as a food for thought. How we spoke about, how you create a portfolio of risk and benefit, right? So I think this is addressing that and says, do you think Elon Musk could have ever created SpaceX if he quantified the complexities and did a cost benefit analysis? Where should one draw the line between vision vis-a-vis risk versus return trade-off? So I want to answer that for the simple reason that I had the compliance manager for Tesla as my student and in my autonomous vehicle business course. And I can tell you that what we see about what is presented outside about how a person is innovating and the culture is creating returns does not mean that's how the business is run on the inside. And it is not just you do a cost benefit analysis and say, okay, I put this money and whether it is going to give me ROI today and I am going to answer to the stock market in the short term. Elon Musk is not looking at it short term. He is playing a very long lead game with Tesla, with SpaceX, in everything that he touches. But that doesn't mean that he's not managing money. He doesn't have a CFO who's saying, okay, how much money have we raised? How much money do we have? What is our cash flow? How many people can we hire? What rate at which we want to grow our business? So innovation does. So that is a myth to think that innovation is something out of control. So when we are talking about complexity, it is about managing complexity. It's about embracing complexity, but also being able to manage it. So it's not a pure cost benefit analysis and say, yes, we cannot do this and let's stop this. If there is justification that you can have a loss leader and in the long run that you can go launch a space to a rocket to Mars, and it makes sense, then you find the money for it, you make a way to run the business because you believe in your vision, but you go in knowing that you're bearing a risk that it might not take off, right? That it might take 5 years instead of 3 years or 2 years, and you know that outlier is going to be there. So that's my take on that question, I would say. Should we move to another question, Chris?
I just wanted to make a comment
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
sense. From a risk perspective, innovation perspective, Tesla's and SpaceX bets were actually easy bets, because he moved, let's say the move were into very, very old industry, with very low level of innovation. They're basically doing the same things over and over for the last 40 years. Nothing changed from a technology perspective. So it was the right place where to innovate, because nobody was innovating anymore. And that's the thing. So of course, to do that, he needed a lot of capital. And to have a lot of capital, you need to build a bold vision, a great marketing. That's what he managed to do. But if you look at the fundamentals of those industries, it was a no-brainer. That was a place where you could disrupt them, because there was basically no innovation.
Yeah. I would say, looking at autonomous vehicles, which is my area of focus, there were companies who were creating autonomous vehicle tech and testing it out for years and years. And I don't want to name names, but when Tesla came in and built the electric car, and their focus was to build the electric car, but then said, hey, we are going to give this auto feature. It is not technically a self-driving car feature. They do not go to our registry of motor vehicle and say that this is a self-driving car feature. They don't register it that way. But they started recreating the car as a software on wheel. That woke up all the OEMs when their valuation and started building up with just the promise of the future. So when we talk about innovation, it is easy to get carried away, to think about, hey, market is saying that there is this hyped up price, and we believe that price, and that is the return of the investment, right? That is not the return of investment. The return of the investment is when they deliver on their innovation and go build what they are set out to build, or to go achieve whatever their vision is. And it's very easy. People tend to think about the short-term returns with the hype of the market. And so that kind of comes in the way. And that goes back to your point of the innovator's dilemma. So if you have a business to run and you bring innovation into the same org, then there is going to be the tug of war of, hey, we cannot take the risk of displeasing the market, though it makes long sense, return in the long sense. And so that's why you have to keep the innovation center different from the run the business part of business. I see a couple more questions. I'm going to give this to you because this sounds just like you. With respect to macroeconomics, how do you place complexity theory with reference to general equilibrium models, especially while explaining global trade?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think that would need another. I first of all, I'm not an expert, so I can definitely say stupid things on the field. But I think in general, it actually pops up a topic that came up in our conversation with Sudha some days ago in different topics, which is, let's say, the word that I'm going to use here is ergodicity. So I think the interesting element of and there is a field which I suggest if some people are interested to study, to look at it, which is ergodicity economics, which is a field that I find really interesting. The main issue with economics, macroeconomics, but also microeconomics, is that it tends to be time invariant. So it basically considers averages over time as the same as averages over the ensemble, over all the different systems, which is wrong. Because actually you can demonstrate mathematically that, of course, how the economics evolves over time, let's say, influences, let's say, the behavior of the system. But all our core economic, let's say, theories are based on ergodicity, which is the wrong assumption, again. And that's something that comes from complexity theory. In complexity science, ergodicity is an assumption that you can make in very, very, very special conditions, which are definitely not the world that we live in. But most of our economy is based on that assumption. And that creates a lot of problems. And the sooner we will realize in our economic modeling that time is a fundamental variable and you can't live without that, the sooner we will do that, the more interesting things will pop up. For example, if you take time into account, you find out that cooperation is more efficient than competition. But again, in our economics, we tend to push competition because time is not considered a variable. Just this basic change.
Looks like we are at the end of our session time. There's one question, if we are allowed to take one more minute. There's a question about how do you know and decide on what technology to focus on what to invest on? What are the key metrics? Do you want to take a stab, or do you want me to tell you?
Please go, Sudha. I mean, I'm sure you, in that sense, you can provide a great answer to this question.
So thank you so much. I mean, you've taken us to a totally different plane altogether on the ergodicity thing. So I hear this question a lot on which technology to focus and how do I get in and where do I innovate kind of thing. I would say you think about, I'm a person who believes in personal leadership. So if you're driven by passion on, hey, I like this particular AI technology, I find that fascinating and I want to bring that to my company, I want to learn more about it, I would say go that direction. Or you look at the industry trend and competition is doing something, looks like we should try that and see whether that's viable, is another thing. And the key metric I would say is you think about the short term, what is, what are you trying to achieve? Sometimes it's possible that you bring in innovation and management is not ready, your company is not ready. So it might not be ROI returns, but it is just educating the company to wake up to that technology. So you might want to define the metric not just in raw data and numbers, but what is your goal, what you want to achieve by bringing this technology and bringing that focus today. And then think about the long term. Are you going to go into a new market? Are you going to go into different vertical? Are you just surviving and are you going to be disrupted out of the market that you have to get in? That's not something that you don't have a choice. That could be different metrics. You have to have like long term and short term metrics that it's not just KPIs, but you think about your goals that way. So I would say with that, Chris, can people connect with you on LinkedIn?
Yes, please follow me on LinkedIn, and more things to follow. I'm also working on a podcast around complexity, so
and it's called
shared soon, Engines of Creations, and you can follow me on LinkedIn. I will share more details soon.
Yes. Thank you, everybody. I'm happy to follow up. I'm sure there are more questions, but this was a fascinating discussion. And I think Chris and I have to continue this offline. So
definitely.
Join
Thanks
us,
a lot.
with us on LinkedIn. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sudha. Thank you so much, Chris. It was a really, really interactive session. We'll surely add you on LinkedIn and get a take on other things as well. Thank you so much for joining the session. Thank you to the audience. We'll see you in a short while. Thank you.
Thank you, Garima.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.